The following is a presentation of the Six Arrows Radio Network.
On this episode, we have Mark Wagner, N6MRW, on the show discussing the building and deployment of a portable 2-meter repeater. This is the Ham Radio 360 Field Radio Podcast. This show is brought to you by Chameleon Antenna. Versatile, dependable, stealth, and built to last. I am your host, John Jacobs, W7DBO, Whiskey 7, Delta Bravo Oscar. I'm a third-generation amateur radio operator, and I reside with my family in Utah. If this is your first time hearing this show, thank you for clicking and tuning in. This show is part of the Ham Radio 360 network of shows. This show releases every other Thursday, and the Workbench with George and Jeremy releases the opposing Tuesdays. Kale, with the original Ham Radio 360 show, releases the Tuesdays before this show, but he is on a sabbatical until the new year. You can find our show notes and links on the web at fieldradiopodcast.org or at hamradio360.com/fieldradio. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube channel for expanded content not included in the podcast. As a way of news item, our friends at Main Trading Company in Paris, Texas, are doing the Help a Ham project again this year. Richard did this project last year, and I'm glad to see this happening again. Help a Ham is the opportunity for us to come together in the hobby and help out a fellow operator or operators with some equipment. There are two parts. First, if you would like to nominate a person, contact MTC Radio and give them the information. Second, and most importantly, you can go to the MTC Radio website at mtcradio.com or the link in the show notes and donate to the cause. MTC Radio will transfer 100% of your donation minus any credit card or PayPal fees to purchasing new equipment for a deserving ham. MTC Radio is also donating $500 to add to the pot. They can take donations as low as $1 and as generous as you want to be. So please consider this opportunity to help out one or a few of our fellow hams this holiday season. Once again, you can find out all the information on our show notes page or at mtcradio.com. Our guest on the show is Mark Wagner. He is an operator from California, and in the interview, you'll find he is a relatively new ham and one that got in the hobby by listening to Kale on the Ham Radio 360 podcast. It would be interesting to see how much ambassador work Kale has done to the hobby over the few short years. I hope this show does the same in encouraging people to look at the hobby and join our ranks. If you were just checking out the amateur radio hobby, Kale has a great Getting Started episode on the Ham Radio 360 podcast that I will link in the show notes. Also, be sure to check out our friends of the show at hamstudy.org for a free online program to help you pass those exams. So with that, let's welcome Mark to the show. We'd like to welcome to the show Mark Wagner, N6MRW, November 6, Mike Romeo Whiskey. He's a general class licensee from Burbank, California. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So let's get started with, let's give the audience your ham history and what kind of clubs and groups you're affiliated with.
Okay. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. Had a gentleman lived around the corner from me who was a ham radio operator. Just was completely taken by all the antennas. So I went over and talked to him, showed me a shack, and I just was in awe. And so I started going through the process. They used to give classes over at Lockheed. And I got to the Morse code, and it just stumped me. And never kind of got around to coming back to it until about 3 years ago. And actually found the Ham Radio 360 podcast under its prior name and started listening to that and took my exam. And so I was a tech for 2 years, and I've been a general now for a year.
So you also got stumped by the code that I got stumped with many, many times growing up.
Yeah, I had my practice straight key from Radio Shack, and I could just never make it click in my head.
So have you now have a desire to go back and do the Morse code? Or are you satisfied with where you're at?
It's on my to-do list.
Yeah.
I got a lot of other things going on at the moment, so it's not really the right time. But I played around with the tools a little bit, some of the Android apps and everything, and it seems like it's a lot more accessible now. So I will get there.
So how fast did you go from, I guess I cut you off there, how fast did you go from tech to general?
I was a tech for about 2 years, and then went ahead and took my general. My son was interested in getting licensed, so at one of the Papa System, which is a big club down here in LA, they were having a small get-together, and they were offering exams. So he studied for his tech, and I studied for my general, and I got my upgrade, and he got his ticket on the same day.
Oh, that's fun. So he's a second generation ham.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. So I'm a third, but mine was very long drawn out before I didn't get my license till I was in the mid-20s. So I, like I said, that code kind of held me up. The minute they did the no code tech, I was there. Now they don't even call it that anymore.
No, thankfully.
So what, you said you're with a couple groups in here, so you've gotten pretty active in amateur radio just in the few years you've been in.
I've kind of dabbled in different places trying to figure out where I fit in. I'm a member of the Papa System Amateur Radio Club. Not as active as I would like to be. I drop in on some nets and go to the breakfast occasionally. Also, when going through CERT training, community emergency response training with the local fire department, kind of hooked up with some of the races guys there, and so I join in on their nets occasionally just to keep in touch and see what's going on. I'm a member of LAX Aries, and then also kind of tangentially State Military Reserve, a fairly large number of us who are also ham radio operators, some in the Mars program, some not.
Okay. All right. So right after I started this podcast in July, you contacted me with a really cool idea that I've seen this pop up on the forums now and then, and it seems like you have figured out a way to get a very economical, I should say, and also very portable repeater, crossband and single band repeater for the VHF, UHF, and so that's kind of what we want to talk about today. Why don't you kind of describe an overview, kind of what you've done with your setup? Okay,
so I'm not all that technically skilled. My soldering is atrocious. So I came at this from trying to solve a problem. With the State Military Reserve, we have access to some ham band adjacent frequency spectrum, which an unlocked radio or like the Japanese or the Chinese radios can access just below 2 meters and just below 70 centimeters. And the problem is often it's a volunteer. The State Military Reserve State Guard is a volunteer force. We have essentially no budget, and we're self-supporting. And oftentimes we're either sent out to assist with emergency response, or we're training the National Guard, and we have to supply our own radios. So 2/3 of the people will show up with a Baofeng and maybe some frequencies in it. No idea how to program it, but we've got to be able to talk over several kilometers of open terrain out in the field, or at least 3, 4, 5, 6 city blocks. And those don't work very well. The range gets cut down really fast in the city, and even out in our training areas, the limits you reach the limits very quickly. So a repeater seemed to be the obvious answer. And since we are self-supporting, it had to be portable. I had to be able to throw it in a go bag. And I kind of wanted it to be able to last for at least 10 to 12 hours was my guesstimate, without having to be recharged or messed with in any way. And pretty much did that with off-the-shelf equipment that you can buy online. The whole total cost was about $120, and I think I had to make one cut and add 2 connectors, and that was really the only technical thing I did.
So that's interesting that we talk a lot about, just getting entry level used repeaters, $500 to $1,000 heavy. Yes, you can transport them in a say a Jeep or the back of a pickup truck, but so this is what's fascinating with me is being able to use HTs in a repeater type setup, and obviously we're sacrificing a lot of technical performance doing that, but at the same time, if you didn't sacrifice those technicalities, you obviously wouldn't have a system at all. So, that's where you kind of talk about some system is better than, some system is better than the perfect system. And so that's why I'm interested in this concept you have. So what, so your repeaters are off 2 HT Baofengs?
I kind of have standardized on the Baofeng UV82.
Okay.
And I bought the older base model ones that are just 5 watt, not the newer 8 watt ones, because I wasn't sure just how much abuse these things were going to take.
Yeah.
And then 12 amp hour lead acid battery. The repeater controller, as it is made by S.E.N.D, and it comes with the hand mic adapters for pretty much any of the Chinese radios, the Kenwood style adapter. And then I replaced the batteries with in the radios with the car adapters for the cigarette lighters. Used a triple cigarette lighter adapter to plug those into, and then cut the tail off of that and put spades on it to attach to the battery. And then threw a couple of roll-up Slim Jims as antennas. Okay,
so when you talked about that, you put in the 12 volt on the cigarette lighter, the 12 volt socket. So these are ones where it's like a clamshell replacement, right? So the batteries, there is no internal battery. It's like basically an empty shell that has the 12 volt socket coming out of it.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're just solely using the 12 amp hour battery for power.
Yep, that's it.
Okay, and these little tiny devices, those Sansonic devices, I've seen a couple different type like that. So this is a live transfer between one radio to the other, or one input, one being output. So it's not a store and forward type system.
I'm not exactly sure how it works internally. There is a bit of store and forward because you can watch the delay of the transmission coming in on one, and then it starts on the other and finishes up. So there is a delay.
Okay.
And that did take a little bit to get people used to, because there's a couple extra seconds of delay than you would normally expect from a commercial grade repeater.
Yeah.
From the time you key the mic until you can start speaking, it's good enough.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is this is something that's lightweight, portable, and will be set up much faster and much more agile, and will give you greater performance in the field than say that, when you get the best, the better and the best. This
right.
This solves the issue, and like you said, it solves the problem you had especially when you're in if a club is out there looking for something like this just to fill a hole at their special events, their drills, or if they identify that they have an area that has a pocket that they need something quickly and rapidly. This is kind of a rapid deploy system.
Yeah, absolutely. With the Slim Jims, I just mount them, the transmit going basically like up a flagpole. The transmit goes up, and then the receive hangs about 10 feet below that, pointing down, so that they're in each other's nulls.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about trying to get the vertical spacing so that you don't get interference or intermod. Doing them in a straight line, straight up and down, with about I've done it with 10 to 15 feet of space in between them, and had no problem with it being in the nulls. And it's worked pretty effectively. I took this out for our annual training. We had 25 users on a regular basis and ran it about 14 hours a day. Constant communications all day long. This was military annual training with the National Guard, so there's a lot of traffic on it. I did borrow from someone else a Harbor Freight single panel solar panel.
Okay.
It was about a 1.5 watt. It made it increased the time we could operate to a full 14 hours without having to put a charger on it. Plan down the road would be to get at least a 5 watt panel to actually charge a little bit in excess of what the radios are drawing. But it held up. We ran it for 7 days, and radios continued to work flawlessly. No problems with overheating. The repeater controller held up just fine. So it turned out to be a lot more robust than I anticipated.
Yeah, so the solar panel, like I said, it didn't fully keep the batteries topped off, but Sometimes solar panels just need to solve the problem of buying time, essentially. Buying an extra hour, basically.
Yeah, it got us a couple extra hours, and that was enough to get us by.
Yeah. And so your Slim Jim antennas, are those the N9 tax ones?
I went really cheap on them.
Which follows the theme of the box.
Yeah, I didn't, and I also wanted much smaller. And so these ones are actually maybe a quarter of an inch wide instead of where the N9 tax ones are at least an inch wide.
Yeah. They're the ladder line J-pole. So if people aren't aware of what we're talking about, the roll up, it's a J-pole. The ladder line is cut in a J-pole configuration. And they come in different sizes because ladder line comes in different sizes.
Right, and this one looks more like about the width of the old TV, two-wire TV antenna.
Yeah.
But so that way it rolls up real small, and that way all the radios, the battery, everything that I need all fits into an MTM 50 cal ammo box.
Okay.
And that was kind of my goal, is I had to be able to put everything into one box, and that includes a couple of extra runs of coax just to get spacing between the antennas and whatnot.
Yeah. So I noticed you put some 90-degree angle on the antenna. Was that just to stress relief the head of the radio, or is that so you could close the lid a little bit to protect it?
Actually, I used commercial Velcro on the back of the battery replacements.
Okay.
And stuck them into the box, and also put them on the bottom of the battery to keep it from shifting around. And with those 90 degrees, that was just enough to come across over the lip of the box when it was open.
Okay. And then what's your you say you got some coax run. Obviously you're going up like you said, a flagpole type situation, and they both have the same length because one's pointing down, one pointing up. How many feet of cable have you found you needed?
I had one run of 15 feet and another one that was 10 feet long. That worked in this instance. I think I might like a couple extra lengths handy next time, just in case the situation's different.
Yeah. And then do you carry do you field program these at all, or those are kind of usually hard to do? Do you carry sync cables with them at all to try and match them, or you just pretty much have your frequencies? You already have your known frequencies, so everything's programmed ahead of time.
Well, thankfully, several of us had gotten together from multiple units in the State Guard, and we actually had agreed on some frequency pairs to use, and we actually built essentially a code plug for us.
Oh, okay.
And so I had those pre-programmed, but I did bring with me a laptop and went through, and every person who showed up as part of their in-processing, if they had a radio, I grabbed it, made a chirp version for their radio, got it filled up, and off they went. And that way we had both repeater and just single channel for all of our operations.
Okay. And then you mentioned that, like I said in the beginning, you were doing crossband, which is what everybody expects. And you can do crossband just off one antenna because you're using the 2-meter side and the 70, listening on one and transmitting on the other. But with this 2 antenna setup with one antenna pointed down, you've actually found, like I said, success in same frequency without any type of desensing or intermod. Yeah,
we had no problem. I tested it on a pair that was just outside of 2 meters, and it worked fine. And that's where we wound up using it. I also went up and tested it on we were in Central Coast of California, and there was a unused GMRS pair that I tested it on just locally to make sure I wouldn't get any intermod.
Yeah.
But we've also got a 400 megahertz pair that we've programmed in. It works just fine there. And then we've got another pair that's just below that in the 390s with squad radios that we're able to use as well. So yeah, and same standard repeater pair with standard offsets and PL tones.
Okay, so you've even been able to do a standard offset, not a wide offset. I've seen some portable units that needed a more broader offset. Still staying in the same band, but just a longer offset. Mm-hmm. You were able to do standard offsets.
Yeah, standard offsets for 2 meter and 70 centimeter, and also PL encode and decode. it turned out to do a whole lot more.
Yeah, so you actually had decode on the outgoing too.
Yes.
Okay. And when you talk about going outside the 2 meter band, just so people understand, I think you said it before, these are actually frequencies allocated to your state guard?
Yes, these are either specifically military, or some of them are used primarily for urban search and rescue, and we've gotten authorization from state communications in order to use them.
Okay. So are you'd say still a majority of your operators are the amateur radio operators, or do you find you get a mix, especially with the search and rescue units?
We get a mix. There's probably, I'd say almost a third of the people in the Guard and State Guard are at least have a technicians. Everyone's really pushed for it because we do so much work with FEMA training and working in EOCs. We're around it. We've got, and since we have to be self-supporting, no one's going to hand us a SINGARS generally, or a P25 radio or whatever.
Yeah.
Units just don't have spares laying around. So since we have to be self-supporting, we've got quite a few, and those of us who are also tend to evangelize a lot to try and get everybody else on as well.
Yeah. You find with public safety radios, at least here in the state of Utah, it's a single state entity that manages those, and they actually charge per radio. So when agencies are looking at their budget, they really don't have, seems like they don't really have a lot of extra radios out there because they're paying a monthly fee to keep those every single radio active. It's not like once they own the radio, they can hand it off to an amateur radio group and put it on loan. So that's usually where those come in tight. So that's good that you've been able to find these radios that can work outside the band. How does your performance do? Are they close enough have you watched it on the SWR meter? Like you said, you kind of dip a little bit below where these are tuned, or did you have these antennas retuned for your frequencies?
We lost a little bit in SWR, but they're really close. They're very close to amateur bands. They are literally adjacent in most cases.
Okay.
So it's not enough that you could really see a difference. Out walking on one mission, I did make a contact back to where the repeater site was at from I was about 7 miles away, which from an HT standing in a bunch of trees. Yeah, was pretty respectable, and it covered our entire operational area. So
yeah, and the roll-up J-poles their SWR is so flat. If you've ever seen the mapping on those, it's not like the HF bands where you have a sweet spot on that and then you drastically jump out of tune the farther you get away from the sweet spot. It seems like when you've seen these on the graphs, they barely creep out of tune. There's not a definite hot spot on it, I guess. So where did you put this? Was this box at a location that was monitored, or what did you go put it up on a hill and leave it for the day?
Well, the mission that we had, we were actually working out of a combat town, so a big cinder block town. And so I appropriated the one of the top floor rooms of what was quote unquote the hotel, a 3-story cinder block building. That right above my room there was a large PVC flagpole.
Oh, okay.
And so I was able to set it up there, run the antennas right up to that, and it was constantly monitored. Our net control was actually sitting there right in front of the repeater to control the net and take logs and all of that. The issue we had run into was geographically, the operational area was to the west of the hotel, and most of the command and where most of the people were was to the east, and it was significantly lower in elevation.
Okay.
So where the command was at, they're not hearing anything because there's a hill in the way.
Yeah.
And adding this repeater up on top of this hotel gave us local coverage all throughout the town, no matter what the elevation was or even inside of the buildings, so that we could hear people who were out 4 or 5 miles doing missions.
Yeah. So you could get the far away people, but then you could also get the very limited people sitting inside concrete. Were these buildings open top, just concrete walls?
No, they're multi-story, reinforced concrete with concrete floors and some of the most high-tech surveillance equipment in there. because depending on the mission, they do videotape everything going on inside of them.
Okay.
For after-action reviews and whatnot. So there's a ton of RFI.
Yeah.
There's a ton of rebar and concrete everywhere, which is, as you know, it's tough to get comms to work through that. So
yeah, that's a really good test. Even like I said, they're up close, but they still need the benefit of that repeater, even though they're that close. So I guess you could dub this as a Go Box portable repeater sniper option. Because you pretty much put it up on the sniper's nest.
Yeah.
I
put it up as high as I could so we could reach the distant stations, and then wasn't too worried about the retransmit because it was just trying to go locally. But having the extra DBI from the roll-up J-pole was enough to push it through most of the buildings.
Yeah. Well, it also helps the local. If your retransmit has the same power, it helps other people to know to not talk on top of other people. So if you can't hear other people hitting the repeater type thing, so it helps the people getting stepped on.
Yeah, definitely. And it took a little bit of getting used to, but we wound up having really good results and getting a lot of use out of them. It's usually been the biggest complaint. You get a group of people and you set them out over a couple of square miles and have them running around, and communications is really, really difficult. And we were broken up into teams. We had a National Guard unit that's getting ready to deploy early next year overseas, and they had to go through testing and qualification. And so we were playing the opposition forces. We were the bad guys.
Okay.
So we were sending out teams, 3-man, 5-man, 20-man teams to go and either be attacking them or be civilian villagers or run all these scenarios that they had to kind of check off the box. So we would have sometimes 4 or 5 teams out with different schedules at the same time, and this allowed us to be able to keep constant comms with them, monitor what was going on, and then also we did have at our site also a SINGARS radio, so we could talk to the National Guard and make coordinations with them as well.
Okay. You said your activity on it was pretty constant. Have you put your hand down on them? Felt with the high duty cycle with the HTs? How were they doing on ventilation? And did you do anything to help mitigate that, either shading or active fanning or anything?
They got a little bit warm. It was a little concerning at one point. I thought about fans, but didn't bring one with me. Temperatures were not bad. Were probably mid to high 80s, low 90s. And I didn't notice any problems with them, and I didn't notice them getting hot enough to have like a drop-off in performance.
Okay. Well, one thing you did, and I don't know, maybe you did this on purpose, but by running the battery without the internal lithium pack, running it into an AGM, usually the first thing that heats up on these radios is the heavy draw on the radio or on the battery, and the battery creates heat, which starts heating up the radio. But by running an AGM that probably thought it was kids play with the amp draw, so you're not getting that heat dissipation off the internal battery, and so that probably helped open up some heat sink issues.
Yeah, it seems to have. And then I was also really surprised that the repeater controller never really got significantly hot. I mean, it was warm, but never concerning.
Yeah.
So I was fully prepared. I talked to a couple of buddies of mine, and they're like, "Oh, if that thing bursts into flames, you got to send us pictures."
Where did you get that repeater controller? Was that an eBay item?
That was off of eBay. Grabbed the two UV82s off of eBay. Almost all of it came off of eBay, other than what did I? A Black & Decker trickle charger that I picked up at Home Depot.
Okay, and that's more just for battery maintenance. It's not really it's not going to be a rapid charger.
It wasn't a rapid charger because I knew our missions because we don't have night vision or anything like that, we were going to be limited in nighttime operations. So I was able to, after dark, pull the box and get it over to a power supply and get it charged overnight.
Okay. And I'm just looking at these pictures, and we'll put up this. We put together a really good PDF document kind of walking through and some really good pictures. But I notice also on your 12-volt socket, it has built-in voltmeter, so that takes care of that issue. And you can kind of watch that. What kind of dip did you see being an AGM 12 amp hour battery, what kind of voltage dip did you see when you were transmitting? Was it as you got down to during the end of the day?
I really didn't start seeing a voltage dip on transmit until it got down to about 12.7, 12.6 volts. Okay. Then I would see about a tenth of a volt drop, and then it would bounce back afterwards.
Okay.
So it's really, I mean, that battery is barely getting drained.
Yeah, off those HTs is such a light load.
But yeah, that cigarette lighter adapter, when I found that with the voltage meter on there, I thought, well, there we go. That solves two problems with one. It's got individual switches, so you can shut each one of the cigarette lighter adapters off so that it doesn't drain if you want to leave it plugged in. And then it also has USB chargers on either side of it, which also came in handy to charge cell phones while we're sitting there as well.
Extremely handy. I always say get USB chargers on all your Go boxes. You'll be surprised that that's usually the most popular, especially with family, or even I've really been liking Goal Zero has some USB lights that you can either hang up in a string or they're kind of a wand. And so those USB ports work perfect for those, just to give yourself a little temporary light, but not have to wire in anything special. So
yeah.
So looking at, and once again, I was thinking of your draw. You're really only transmitting. You're listening on one, transmitting on the other. So at any one time, all you're doing is keying up a 5-watt radio, basically off a 12 amp hour AGM, which is not that much. Did you experiment going to lower power modes? Just kind of see where your edge was?
I didn't. I did throw one of the UV82 HPs on there, the 8-watt version, and used that a little bit. I saw the fluctuation more on transmit. It would drop maybe 0.2.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a huge difference. But no, I'm sure if you dropped it down to 1 watt or 1 or 2 watts in the low, you could probably run 24 to 30 hours.
Yeah, another thing, as I'm staring at these pictures, I'm just kind of thinking, if you do get into a high heat situation, you could, because since one is always listening and one is transmitting, when you're on single band, you could just swap the units.
Yep, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so when we talk about this repeater controller, this is kind of one thing that always comes up with cross-banding and portable repeaters is not having the CWID or the repeater ID. And there are kits out there. You can get kits, self-solder kits, or people can sell you a little microboard that'll interject itself. You got to do a little bit more trickery with that. But in a situation like this where you have net control, and if net control is doing their ID every 10 minutes in a single band, of course there's a lot of debate on this, but that would satisfy those ID requirements just by virtue of net control identifying themselves.
I would think so, and also in the way that we've been operating it, you've got a control operator is sitting right there.
Yeah,
and we were identifying very frequently because it was in heavy use. To me, it seems to meet the standard.
Yeah, and I always say sometimes if you're cross-banding, I would say just to put on the safe side, just have the net control identify the two frequencies. We're cross-banding on these two frequencies at the 10-minute mark, and that I think is more than sufficient. Like you said, you have a control operator there, and the Baofengs do have timeout timers, so you don't have to worry about the thing keying up. But really, this controller is, people will see it on our show notes. It simply just plugs into the headphone microphone jack of one HT and plugs into the other. So this is a very hot swappable item. And I always say if you need spare parts for your Baofeng, you just have a second one. Because then you have one of everything ready to go.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it, and we've basically gotten most of the people in our State Guard unit down to 2 models.
Okay.
So that makes battery swapping and antennas and everything really easy, programming really simple for any organization. If you can standardize, I've got a pile of UV82 batteries at this point. Every time you buy them, if you get a deal, you get a couple extra batteries.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's always the thing is these are affordable enough that you can get redundancy either by having a second one, which I do. I always carry 2 of these in my Go kits, but I also carry batteries, 4 batteries, clamshells, AA. So you can affordably get quite good redundancy off these items. So looking forward with what you've done with the exercises, what are your future plans? Are you looking at a bigger box or improving this box, or are you just like we've solved the problem and we're good?
No, it's heavy. The battery itself is most of the weight, but then you've got a lot of cables and the antennas and everything else in there. So this was done quickly and on the most limited budget I could. So I'd like to replace the battery with like about a 9 amp hour lithium phosphate ion battery.
Okay.
And then trying to find a good size, at least 5 watt, but preferably a 15 watt solar panel.
Okay.
To go along with it.
Okay. And then just put a little solar charge controller with it, and you'll be set.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I've 15 watt. I mean, I have Goal Zero. They don't sell them anymore, but you can find them in refurb sometimes on deals and stuff. They have a 15 watt panel. Gives you about, when I've put a load on it gives you about 10 watts. And then if you have just a smallest charge controller, that'd be interesting to see. There's Genasun is the one I usually like, but those are the more pricey ones. But I've had a lot of success just with ones off of Amazon, just a simple solar charge controller, because usually the RF noise you get is in the HF area. I haven't really seen, at least the ones I've experimented with, I haven't really seen RF hash affecting VHF, UHF.
Okay, yeah, and it also needs to be something that's going to be durable, because this winds up getting thrown in a bag, thrown in a duffel bag, and loaded on and off 5-ton trucks and everything else. So it's got to be able to take a beating. That's the other issue. Is a lot of the solar cells, at least the rigid panels, are not really designed to take any abuse. So.
Yeah, the rigid panels need to be babied. I store them inside my sleeping bag in the trailer. You lay them down flat and tuck them in for the ride, because they do scratch up. So a cloth one, not sure. Yeah, you might be able to fit that in there. Biano Power has a really good cloth one that's not too bad. Of course, the gold standard was Power Film with their performance in that area. So a cloth one would probably be good. You said you already had the PVC pole in place in your sniper's nest, but do you have a pole configuration when you don't have that option?
I've got a fiberglass, carbon fiber fishing crappie pole that I picked up off of eBay.
Okay.
That's usable. Usually it's just, a couple rolls of parachute cord, and, wherever we show up, find something up high and string it up.
Yeah, it's true, because you could, I'm always an advocate of the arbor's weights, because those things are, funny thing, they're designed to go up in a tree and come back down. It's in some arbor's throw line that's extremely lightweight. So really, you could pretty much daisy chain your throw rope, your first antenna, a little bit of paracord, 10 or 15 feet, whatever your spacing want to be, and then hook up your other one. And you can pretty much just create a daisy chain tree.
Yep, and just haul the whole thing up.
Yeah, and just throw it up with a rope. Yeah, that sounds like a good thing. Anything else you're looking at doing besides improving your battery strength, solar panel?
That's pretty much it for right now. We don't have a need for really any more power than this. This is actually just perfect for us, and it's also not so much power that you have to worry about bleeding over into anybody else or interfering with anything. So this is pretty effective. I've got a LA Police Gear, go bag that this 99% fits in. It kind of peeks out in one corner. That I can also throw another small radio bag in for my personal comms gear, and makes one nice little compact commo bag with everything I need and all the spares and everything. So this, other than tweaking it a little bit here and there, is pretty much going to probably stay as it is. Also, the funding being what it is, I'm not going to sink too much money into it, but it's given me a lot of experience kind of playing with the batteries and the charging and everything to look at building my own portable power supply for doing like summits on the air with, to be able to make something that I can carry that would be good weight, good power, give me what I need to be able to operate out on a mountaintop someplace.
Yeah, then that's when you really want to start getting lightweight. But it sounds like this is why I've really gravitated to the field radio side of amateur radio. Is you identified an issue or a problem or a need. You went out and was able to basically research and piece together an item that found pieces that work and solve the problem. And especially in an economical way for your group. So that's a really good accomplishment you have there.
Oh, thank you.
So, well, thank you for coming on the show. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we sign off here?
No, I really appreciate all the work that you're doing, and for Cale for putting together this combination of podcasts, and the amount of information you guys put out is really greatly appreciated. Doing a lot for the hobby, and look forward to what programs you guys are going to be putting out next.
Yeah, I was a fan of the Photime podcast. I told Kel not to change the name, and luckily he didn't listen to me. He didn't take my advice, which was good. So yeah, appreciate you being a longtime listener of the Ham Radio 360. I call it the project or something like that, but it's kind of great to see this network come together in different ways. So thank you for coming on the show in 73.
73.
Thank you again, Mark, for coming on the show and sharing your example of a portable repeater box. If you have something you have built or found something that works well in the field and would like to share your story and experience, please feel free to contact me at john@hamradio360.com. I mentioned at the top of the show that Chameleon Antenna is the sponsor of this show. If you are looking for a well-built, well-designed antenna for your field setup or even your home, please check them out at chameleonantenna.com or look in our show notes for a link. For the training item, I came across a protocol that is being adopted by some public safety agencies on conveying medical information in a discreet, effective manner. I find this has great crossover to our emergency communication plans and even working event support, where we are often asked to convey medical information. Hello, this is John, W7DBO, Whiskey 7 Delta Bravo Oscar, with this training item. Public safety dispatch centers have been using a protocol called S.E.N.D, which stands for Secondary Emergency Notification of Dispatch, or Medical Miranda. I found this could have value in emergency communication operations or in directed nets, such as at a race or a disaster. The S.E.N.D protocol ensures that information relayed from a scene needing medical attention will provide the essential information needed in a consistent and concise manner. If you have ever had the chance to call 911 or an emergency dispatch center reporting a medical incident, you will notice they have a protocol of questions to ask the caller. This question and answer period goes back and forth until dispatch has received all the information necessary to dispatch a medical response to a scene. Now imagine this same question and answer period being asked by dispatch, then relayed from a net control operator, then answered by the reporting operator, then relayed back to the net control operator, then to the emergency medical dispatcher. The amount of transmissions and breaks in the traffic can be an arduous process. If the calling operator, the relaying station, and the emergency medical dispatcher all followed the same protocol, the key information could be sent in one organized, consistent message. This is where the S.E.N.D protocol has its advantages. The S.E.N.D protocol consists of 7 key items of information. 1. Chief complaint and incident type. Is there more than one person injured? 2. Approximate age. 3. Conscious. Yes or no, or alert. 4. Breathing. Yes, no, or a difficulty. 5. Is there chest pain? This would be in an illness case. Or 6. Is there severe bleeding? This would be in an accident or injury case. 7. Do you need lights and siren response? Notice location is not one of the 7 items. The S.E.N.D protocol has the assumption that your location is known to net control. If it is not, then you would need to add your location also. An example of using this protocol may sound something like this. Calling station. Net, SAG-1, emergency traffic. Receiving station, SAG-1 net, go with emergency traffic. Calling station, net, SAG-1, my location, using S.E.N.D protocol, I need a medical for a bike vehicle crash with 2 patients. One is 35 and the other is 22. Both patients are conscious and alert and breathing normally. Patient that is 35 has severe bleeding to the left leg. By using the S.E.N.D protocol, you're able to quickly relay all the information needed in one efficient message packet in an expected format. This information can be relayed to EMS dispatch without having to traverse multiple messages from dispatch to the calling station via net control via dispatch. Depending on the dispatch center, you may be able to tell them you are using this S.E.N.D protocol, and they will then expect the information in this format. This is a good information item to have on one of your lanyard cards or in your notebook. In conclusion, the S.E.N.D protocol also allows discrete transmission of medical and personal information over open radio frequencies. If you are in an event, always use the BIP number and never the person's name. For more information and a link to a S.E.N.D protocol card, visit w7dbo.net. Thank you. This is John, W7DBO, with this training item. This will do it for this episode. Thank you again, Mark N6MRW, for coming on the show. And please consider donating to the Help a Ham project this holiday season at mtcradio.com. And also thank you again, Chameleon Antenna, for sponsoring this episode. As always, please send me your comments, feedback, and show ideas to john@hamradio360.com. 73.